What's up, guys? Welcome back to Between the Pylons. I'm John Camacho. Thank you so much for watching. And guys, today we are talking about the Minnesota Vikings draft breakdown. This is their draft class. We're going to be talking about every player that was drafted in the first 3 rounds. So that's going to be 1 first rounder and 4 third rounders. So it's going to be a lengthy episode, but we're going to break down all the big hitters that the Vikings were able to put together in an 11-man draft class that they got here. And I think this is the 3rd year in a row where they've put together double-digit draft class numbers. And I love that. I mean, hey, the whole thing with the NFL draft at the end of the day is a battle of attrition. Get as many swings of the bat as you possibly can. And that's what the Vikings did again this year, doing a really good job of really understanding draft value and all these other things. We're going to get into it. Let me put up the full draft class here so we can just kind of break it down. Obviously traded back in the first round to get a Christian Darrisaw. I'm going to talk about all the third rounders at length, so I'm going to kind of skip over them just for a second, just to talk about a couple of their 4th and 5th round guys here. I'm very, very interested in the running back out of Iowa State. I'm not going to lie to you, I can't say that name, or I'm not at least going to attempt to right now. Love the Florida State defensive end. I am a Florida State fan, so Janarius Robinson, just one of those traits guys who, I mean, they're able to get the back end of the 4th round, and he has all of the potential to be an impact player. I really believe so, and I thought he was a guy who really might sneak in to that like day 2 kind of conversation. I really thought there was a possibility there. Obviously not falling to the back end of the 4th round, but I think some pretty good value there overall. And then again, getting a Tyman out of Pittsburgh, defensive tackle out of Pittsburgh late, another guy who I kind of liked. And again, I think that was his range. That's kind of where I liked him, 5th, 6th round. That makes sense to me for all that he is. But another player that I just, man, they put together some names, and we're going to talk about, like I said, their first 5 picks. You know, there's a couple of guys they got in the 3rd round who I absolutely love, and we're going to break it down. Let's get right into it. Let's break down Christian Darrisaw. Before we talk about the pick of Christian Darrisaw, let's actually talk about the trade first, because the reason the Vikings were picking this far down in the 1st round is because they traded back with the Jets, and I'm going to put that trade up for you, give you the trade breakdown. Moved back to number 23 overall with the Jets. Jets move up and grab an Elijah Vera Tucker. Vikings move back, grab a guy who was mocked to them at 14 a whole lot, so that automatically, you think, really good value. They did also get 2 third round picks. It's kind of funny because this 2 of the picks that the Vikings got in return for the 14 overall pick were picks that the Jets got from the Jamal Adams trade at the beginning of the 2020 season. So that's just kind of interesting. The 1st and the 3rd obviously going to the Vikings eventually for the Jamal Adams trade. They also got a Jets 3rd round pick, their original 3rd round pick as well. Now they did have to throw in a 4th rounder. I'm going to be totally honest with you. This feels like a move where the Vikings really wanted to move back, because really they swapped picks in the 1st round. They swapped a 3rd for a 4th, and they got an extra 3rd to compensate. Not awesome value. Like, I'm just gonna be perfectly honest, not like the greatest value ever to move back 9 spots in the draft. Now, I always talk about value, and then I always try and bring some nuance to it. Look at where they were in the draft. There was conversation about, maybe they'll take a quarterback. There were conversations about a lot of things, but if it wasn't going to be a Justin Fields, it was probably going to be a lineman, and they obviously felt like they were in a position where they probably had a big group, a big tier of guys. They were looking at the class saying, okay, well, we know maybe 2, 3 linemen go, and they felt pretty comfortable about how that was going to work out. Obviously, you never know how their board looked, but I would assume an Elijah Vera Tucker was on there. They probably knew that that's where the Jets were targeting. Obviously, Christian Darrisaw would have been on there. Maybe a Leatherwood was on there, who went 17 to the Raiders, but then there probably could have been a handful of offensive linemen that ended up going day 2 that was on that list as well. So the Vikings moved back, maybe didn't get awesome value, but got something in return for maybe the guy they probably may have taken at 14, or they felt comfortable enough that Darrisaw was really close to the next guy up, whoever that would have been. There's a bunch of offensive linemen that went 2nd round. So I bring that up, and obviously Vikings didn't have a 2nd rounder, so they did get extra value as well by getting an extra day 2 pick on top of it, or technically an extra 2 day 2 picks, but they got 1 for free. The other one was in return for a fourth rounder. That's kind of how I look at it. But anyway, I'm spending too long on the trade. I just like to bring in nuance and talk about trade value and things like that. That's the kind of stuff I get into. So let's talk about Christian Darrisaw here. We're talking about a guy who is 6'5", 322 pounds, has really good feet, very quick for a bigger guy, obviously, very disciplined in pass blocking, and definitely, you know, probably not as physical as I would like, and certainly has some technique issues as well. Definitely, you know, there's some issues there for sure, but this is a guy that I think was regarded inside the top 5 of everyone's board, and I think just the way the offensive line class kind of fell out, and I think the way we all kind of went into the draft thinking about the offensive line class is there was a clear-cut number 1, there was a clear-cut number 2. Number 2 ended up going to the Chargers, I believe, at 12, or excuse me, 13, so 1 pick ahead of the Vikings, and then after that, you know, there was a clump. And obviously the Jets disagreed. Jets trade up to go get their guy, Elijah Vera-Tucker, but the Vikings certainly thought there was a clump. And Christian Darrisaw, I think, was at the top of most people's list. Obviously a guy I think we all knew was going to go first round, and the Vikings get him late with the trade down. You got to love that. So let's move on to their first pick in the third round, right? And there's 4 third rounders that we're going to talk about today. With the second pick in the third round, the Vikings do take KELLEN MOND out of Texas A&M. This is a guy who, I mean, I know most people really did see as in like that next tier of guys, but he was a guy that a lot of people talked about as like that 6th quarterback off the board, or as a guy who, if there was going to be a surprise quarterback going the first round, KELLEN MOND might have been that guy. He obviously, there no quarterback went in the second until the very last pick of the second, and then KELLEN MOND ends up going 2 picks later to the Vikings. Let's pull up the graphic. Pro style offense with Jimbo Fisher. So he's a guy who is going to kind of go in and understands reads and all these things. Jimbo Fisher has put out a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL. Most of them have busted, to be totally honest. But hey, you never know with a KELLEN MOND here. Has pretty good arm talent. Not like I'm going to say super special, but definitely has a good arm. Definitely has enough to make it in the NFL. Mobile guy. He's good at keeping his eyes downfield in the pocket. He has very good eyes in the pocket. Pretty good feel in the pocket, although I will say it's a little bit inconsistent. And inconsistency is his biggest issue. Accuracy. Inconsistent with accuracy. Sometimes he is pinpoint accurate. Sometimes he misses the barn. I mean, sometimes, look, it's hit and miss, and I think that's the reason he wasn't considered a first rounder. That's the reason no NFL team could really even consider him a top end quarterback in this class, because there's just so many questions about his consistency, about his mechanics. There were some minor issues with his mechanics. I didn't want to get into them here because, I mean, we're kind of trying to keep this somewhat short here. But also the other issue that I found consistently watching him is like he struggled at throws down the field. He's a very good short to intermediate thrower, but down the field, yeah, he misses, and it's not pretty, all right? And you don't want to have a quarterback who can't push the ball down the field. That's definitely an issue. I say all that to say this is a guy who has the mold of something that can grow into maybe a starter 2 years down the line. Now, I hate the whole narrative like, oh, he's here to replace Kirk Cousins. If he was there to replace Kirk Cousins, they wouldn't have waited till the third round. And I know that was the second pick that they had in this draft. I get that, but come on. Replace Kirk Cousins. They went into this draft wanting somebody to at least be behind him and you know, tell Kirk Cousins, hey, you can't just rest on your laurels. I mean, you gotta really earn this contract, or we'll find somebody else who can. And I certainly understand them, you know, taking shots in the draft. Justin Fields, if he would have been there at 14, I think they would have taken him. That's at least all the rumors that we've heard is that they would have taken him. And I totally understand. Justin Fields, if Justin Fields would have gone to the Vikings, you could certainly say, oh, you know, they're going to replace Kirk Cousins soon. KELLEN MOND, hey, we'll see. I actually really like the player. I really do like the upside, and he was a guy who, like, I really believed there was a good chance he could have gone first round. Now, I didn't think he was a first round talent or anything like that, but I thought there was a chance that one team could fall in love and say, hey, this is Dak Prescott. We're not going to wait until the third or fourth round. Like that's kind of what I saw as a possibility, and to be totally honest, that's what he could be in the NFL. He could be Dak Prescott. So I really believe that. I do think that's his ceiling. That's his upside. That's all those things that you want to see. Moving on to their next pick in the third round. This is a guy who I have mixed feelings about, a guy that, like, everything I've read online, everyone loves. Everyone loves a Chaz Surratt, linebacker out of North Carolina. And listen, this is the guy who is a former quarterback who transitioned to linebacker because he wanted to make it in the NFL and didn't feel like quarterback was going to be the way he was going to get there. Obviously made the right move. Guy who's 6'2", 229 pounds and is, gets drafted at the end of the third round by the Vikings here because of his physical tools, because of his work ethic, because he does have, somewhat natural instincts for the position. And it can be that kind of sideline to sideline guy. Now, I did think like he did have a slow processor. I felt like he was slow to read and react to certain things, especially in the run game specifically, just to understand where he needs to be and be there ahead of the play as opposed to kind of catching up to the play. Things like that were certainly an issue. And then I also put in there, like, I didn't see him as like a big enforcer. I didn't see him as a guy who was going to lay down the boom, and that's okay. Not every linebacker needs to be that. I think I'm lower on him than the public. I think I'm lower on him than the media or anything that I read, because everything I read on him, preparing for this video, just because I always try and, like, I have my opinions, but I want to know, like, okay, what is the world thinking of him? Like, where are we really with this guy? Because I don't pretend to be the end all be all in these kind of conversations at all. But like, for me personally, I get the upside, certainly get the upside, and third round, yeah, I don't hate the value. I didn't see it on field. Now it makes me feel a lot better that he's a quarterback transferring to linebacker, still learning the position, all those things. But when I watched the film, I didn't know that. So, like, my first taste of him, just coming at it completely not heard of the player, didn't know anything about him, anything like that, just was very underwhelmed for sure. Very, very underwhelmed. And yeah, I saw the athletic potential, but I saw a guy who did have poor pursuit angles. I saw a guy who, would meet the running back in the hole and never, like, shied away from contact by any means. But I never felt like was punching back. Like, I didn't feel like he was the one hitting the running back. I always felt like the running back was hitting him. You know what I mean? And I hope that's fair to say. And hey, we've seen the Vikings turn these mid-round picks at that linebacker, outside linebacker, defensive end position, whatever you want to call it, into stars. We've seen it time and time again. So they have a better feel for what kind of traits they're looking for and which kind of guy they're looking for to mold into a superstar. So we'll give them the benefit of the doubt there, or at least I will give them the benefit of the doubt, because I do have doubts about the player himself. But I don't think he could have gone to a better spot to develop in the NFL, and that's what he's going to have to do. He's going to have to develop. This is a projection pick. I think at the very end of the day, even if you disagree with everything I've said about the player, I think we can all agree it's a projection, and that's totally fair. We'll see what happens. I'm certainly not down on him, and I certainly don't want my name to be associated with I never believed in Chaz Surratt. Not the case at all. I just had questions early on. I'll put it that way. Moving on to their next pick in the third round, they take a guard out of Ohio State, and I love these moves. Take the guard in the day 2, third round kind of range, and really, I mean, you get a WYATT Davis here, a guy who's really known for his strength, toughness, and good leverage. And really, I think the only reason he was sitting there this far into the draft is because he does have a smaller frame, and he's not like a special athlete, but you don't need to be, I don't think, to be guard. You need to be kind of nimble and quick and be able to handle speed and power, but I don't know that you need to be a great athlete by any means. Really, the question is, at 6'4", 315 pounds, that is considered a smaller frame by NFL guard standards. And I laugh. I know that unequivocally is absolutely true, but I laugh just because it's kind of funny, right? Like, I mean, come on, that's small. But this is another guy who you hope can go in and start by his second year. Christian Darrisaw, you look at as like probably a plug and play type of guy. WYATT Davis guy, you get him in the third round. It's hit and miss. We'll see what happens. You hope he can start year one. If not, we'll see. Obviously, the Vikings offensive line has been an issue for years now, so to spend another pick on the offensive line makes sense. I think they couldn't have spent enough picks on the offensive line. They could have gone all offensive line. It wouldn't have been enough. I mean, probably would have been enough. But you get what I'm saying. Another good pick there by the Vikings. Got to love that. But guys, let's finish this conversation on a high note. Let's talk about Patrick Jones II coming out of Pitt. This is one of my favorite players in the class. And listen, let's talk about what he is first, right? And let's put up the graphic here. You can read what it says, but really, like, what he's going to be, he is your weak side rush end. That's what he is. Look, he has great burst, great bend and flexibility, a heat-seeking missile looking for the quarterback. That's what he is. Now, he is a lean frame, and I said a one-trick pony, and the reason I put it in those terms is because, yeah, he's not a guy that I'm going to ask to set the edge. He's not a guy that I'm going to ask to really be effective in the run game at this point in his career, all right? At this point in his career, he is a one-trick pony. Get him after the quarterback. And the fact that nobody was talking about him throughout the process just killed me, because this is a guy who, like, like, okay, I get it. You know, didn't have the hype, didn't have like these flashy numbers or anything like that. But he was a guy who was constantly wrecking havoc in the backfield. This was a guy who had been. He could turn the corner really well. Now, listen, were his mechanics all over the place? Sure. Yes, they were. This is a guy who had limited pass rushing moves, struggled mightily to convert speed to power. I think that was a big thing. And I'm not going to pretend to understand like the you know, detailed mechanics of what he needs to do to get better of that. And I think at a certain extent, like just the way he's built as a human, probably never going to be a strong suit. I think it's certainly, you know, has room for improvement. It certainly does. But right now, he's a one-trick pony. You put him out there on passing downs, third downs, put him on the weak side, put him in a situation where, okay, yeah, you know, we don't really want teams running towards him. We don't want teams game planning around where he's on the field. Let's run at him, blah, blah, blah. Like those things, you could put him in a bad situation and make him look really bad. I'll put it that way. But you could also put him in the right spot. He is going to get after the quarterback. I think he's going to have 5-6 sacks first season. I really do. I think he's going to get 5 or 6 sacks first season. There's going to be a lot of Vikings fans coming up to me being like, hey, John, that Patrick Jones dude, though, he's pretty good. I'm expecting it. I really am. And I do a podcast every week with a diehard Vikings fan right next to me. So I'm very excited to see how the season rolls out. Excited to see what Jay's going to be saying, you know, mid-season. Hey, how'd that Patrick Jones pick work out? I don't know. Maybe I'm getting too bold. Maybe he's a total bust. I don't know. We'll see. I love him. Nobody can tell me he's not going to be awesome. So, hey, that's all I got on those guys. Let's move on to some of my final thoughts, and we'll get out of here. So for my best move, I'm going to take Patrick Jones. I just talked about him. I know I'm not going to repeat myself. I love Patrick Jones. I love the player. I love the pick. He was just one of my guys. So I'm going to say, hey, that was their best move. Probably kind of a cheesy answer, just my personal favorite, but hey, we'll take it. And then worst move, look, I'm not going to lie to you. I kind of just struggled with this. Like I looked at this for a long minute and I'm like, there's not like, okay, I didn't like Chaz Surratt as much as everyone else did. I thought there were better players on the board by my grade, and that's okay, right? Like I'm allowed to be a little different. I think, you know, I think most people would disagree with me and say, hey, they got the right guy. But I do look at the guys that went behind him, and I'm just going to kind of read off the names of the guys that did go after him that I liked a little bit more. And I'm just talking like the next like 5 or 6 pick. You had a Malcolm Kuntz go out of Buffalo. I liked him more. I did. Divine Diablo out of Virginia Tech, different type of player. He's a in the box type of safety guy that I would have liked. You got a De'Ami Brown out of North Carolina, wide receiver, who I absolutely love. That's 3 guys that went with the next 4 picks who I probably would have liked more than the Vikings taking a Chaz Surratt. One of them, similar position that, you know, I literally went 1 pick later to the Raiders. So I mean, I don't know, maybe that's a little cheesy. It absolutely is. Let's be fair, it totally is. It's a cheap shot to a draft that I absolutely loved overall, but I'm gonna take it just because I've been doing best and worst moves for every single team, and this is the one I probably struggled the most with because, like, man, what is there? There's nothing bad. Like, I don't even have a jokey answer. Like, I liked almost everything he did, really. Moving on to my grades, and I do my grades a little bit different. I break it into 3 different categories. The first category being players, giving it an A. Straight A. I really like a lot of the players they got. Even in the later rounds, you know, you look at some guys that I think, you know, have the chance to be contributors. Like, I look at a Janaris Robinson. Like, I like him a whole lot. I really love what they did with just attacking that DN outside linebacker type of role. I think that's what, you know, I think they came into the draft knowing that was going to be a need. They took a lot of shots there, and I really like some of the players they ended up getting. I really do. Moving on, you know, I overall just really like the players they grabbed. Moving on to draft value, I'm giving it a B+, and the reason it's not higher is I do think if you look at other trades in recent past that are similar to the trade down in the first round, you see teams get a little bit more. They essentially got a 3rd round pick to move down 9 spots in the first round. And in the first round, 9 spots is a lot. And in this draft, maybe it was a little different. And I already mentioned kind of the nuance to that, where I didn't really hate the move. That's why I didn't call it my worst move, because like I think there was a good trade. I think with what the Vikings knew they needed, they knew they were going offensive line in the first round. They knew it. And what I assume they felt comfortable with the kind of cluster of guys that they wanted. And at 14, hey, none of the guys that they were hoping fell. They were looking at that next tier of guys, and they were good with whatever they could get. And I think they trade down with the Jets really just because that was the only offer they could get, and the Jets did not give up a whole lot. To move up, you essentially you gave up one of your third round picks to go get a guy that you obviously wanted, that the Jets obviously wanted. Yeah, you gave up another third, but you got a fourth in return. So like, okay, not a huge loss. You just kind of moved down in the draft. That's about it. And in a range of the draft where it doesn't really matter a whole lot. Like it just doesn't. And then other than that, like as far as like the players they got in the range they got them, all I thought was solid grades. If anything, almost all of them I thought was gonna get drafted a little bit earlier than they did. Not like marketably different, but a little bit different. I thought they were all like having a slight fall, other than Chasterod, who I've mentioned a handful of times already. I think that was right where he deserved to go, right? And then moving on to needs, yeah, I think they attacked all their needs. Look, they attacked offensive line early with their first and fourth pick in the draft. They get an offensive lineman, right? And then they attacked that edge outside linebacker position with three different guys in the first four rounds. Really, just three different guys in the third and fourth round, right? And I think that was a good combination of players to go attack needs, and those were the two major needs. But yeah, hey guys, that's all I got on the Vikings. I said they got better this past weekend. I thought they did a lot to improve their team. We'll see how these picks go. I mean, honestly, they have been stockpiling picks the past 3 years in a row now. Some of these picks, I mean, we're going to start to see. I think a lot of their picks last year should have a chance to have a really big year two. That year two jump is real. That year three jump can be big as well. We're going to see how some of their past drafts really end up playing out. I think they did another good job here of Vikings to add as many many picks as you can, get as many swings at bat, and they did a really good job with what they had, I think. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Please consider liking this video if you enjoyed it. You watched this long, hey, hit that like button. Subscribe if you enjoy this kind of content. I'll be putting out a ton of content throughout the off season, NFL season, and then back again with the draft season. All of it 24/7, 365 football content here on YouTube. So hit that sub button if you're interested in something like that. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Peace.